Welcome to The Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice. This episode is made possible with help from Rowman and Littlefield. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and editorial director for Choice, and we're very pleased to welcome Joe Janes to the program. Joe is the author of a book recently published by Rowman and Littlefield called Documents That Change the Way We Live. It's a fascinating book that examines documents and other information objects from thousands of years ago all the way up to today. Joe's descriptions of these items weave in historical and archival context, but always focus on their informational value, especially how a document's particular definition changes over time. How a ballot or a birth certificate goes from a mundane formality to something that changes the course of history, for example. When he's not busy writing books, Joe is an associate professor at the University of Washington Information School. He is a frequent speaker, and he's authored several books on librarianship and technology, and he is the creator and host of Documents That Changed the World, a popular podcast series that he based his latest book on. In this second episode of our four-part series with Joe, we'll start with Webster's dictionary. Joe illuminates how Noah Webster set out to make a uniquely American dictionary that attempted to capture the identity of a still emerging country. We'll also learn a little bit about Noah himself and how the dictionary's contemporary identity, Merriam-Webster, has become a darling of social media. Okay, so let's move on to an actual, one of the entries in your book, let's start with Webster's dictionary. I suppose one of the reasons Webster's dictionary made it to your list is, I put America on the dictionary map, but importantly, Webster seems to have made an effort to tie his dictionary to the identity of a relatively new America itself. America needed a dictionary, and his dictionary was uniquely American, as it turns out. And as you point out, he says in the preface to his dictionary, and I'm quoting, "Language is the expression of ideas, and if the people of one country cannot preserve an identity of ideas, they cannot retain an identity of language." And I'm wondering if you could just explain, in your mind, what Webster was saying there.
Well, you said America needed a dictionary. He certainly thought America needed a dictionary. Now, and he was also, if nothing else, really good at looking out for his own interests. He had multiple careers. He was not a very good lawyer. His father gave him money to go to college, and then he never paid it back, and father had to sell the farm. Right. Noah Webster is this kind of vague, everybody's heard of him, but nobody knows him kind of figure. And there's a lot going on there. One thing he very much is American. And he lived through the Revolution. He actually went to college during the Revolution. And so the idea of Americanness was very important to him because he was there as it was being developed, and particularly in the revolutionary and post-revolutionary period. And then as that became increasingly democratic and Jeffersonian, he got madder and madder. And to the point where there's no citation to Jefferson, any of Jefferson's work in his dictionary.
Yeah.
Washington, yes. Jefferson, no. No Thomas Paine. So there's no references to common sense. There's no references to the Declaration. There's no references to any of that sort of stuff.
Right.
So he had very definite opinions, capital O, on how things should be. And so to him, this dictionary, was a source of money because he was always shy of money, even though he had published a speller in the 1780s that made him rich and famous, made him famous more than rich. And B, was an articulation of the American language, the American vocabulary, and the American spirit, the American nationhood. And that was very important to him. And so this was as much an expression of nationalism and a national identity through its language as it was, definitions and syllabication and pronunciation and such.
Right.
So that was very important to him. And that got baked into the dictionary as a result.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he Americanized many of the, there was a, as you say, that he was accused of sort of linguistic patriotism.
Oh, yes.
Which in the context of a still emerging American identity kind of makes sense, but it also seems awkward in the sense that we kind of expect dictionaries to be a little bit more neutral in their in what they do, their purpose.
Well, we do today. Now,
yeah.
Webster was also, and I didn't know this until I did a little more research, Webster was also the last person to really try writing an entire dictionary by himself. So Samuel Johnson had done it and other people had done it, but OED was very much a group effort and everything since then. So Webster's the last person. Now, mind you, he stole half the entries from Johnson and other people, but that's, that's lexicographers. They all steal from each other.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I picked Webster's dictionary was also because I've taught reference for 1,000 years, and I wanted to know more about Webster. I thought I needed a reference book, so
right.
So there was Webster's dictionary waiting to be done. And we always have talked about dictionaries as either prescriptive or descriptive. Is it meant to describe the language as it's currently being used, or is it meant to prescribe, to give usage and tell people how the language ought to be done? Mm-hmm. Prescriptive dictionaries are very much out of fashion. And Webster kind of tried to have it both ways. He was adding a lot of words to the lexicon, particularly from languages that were much more common in the Americas than they were in Britain, but also spelling reform. He like Melville Dewey, really believed in spelling reform, and he was rather more successful. He gave us IZE and at the end of emphasize. He takes the U out of words like color and humor.
Right.
He tried women, WIMMEN. That didn't work. He tried group, GROOP. That didn't work. So he was marginally successful. But any reference work, any dictionary, any reference work has a purpose. It's trying to achieve some objective. It's for a particular audience. It's trying to meet some particular need. And sometimes it has a point of view. So there's a great Soviet encyclopedia, which that was a long time ago, but there's a great Soviet encyclopedia that has a very specific point of view. Contrast that with something like Wikipedia, mm-hmm. that has a point of view which says it's a neutral point of view, which is a point of view about points of view. With me still. So you can't not do that. There's always something. There's always some reason or perspective or point of view around it. Webster came from the older he got, the more conservative he got, the more anti-populist he got, the more Christian he got, and that's reflected in the definitions, the words, the usages, and his way of thinking about it. So that is very much Webster's dictionary.
Our guest this week, Joe Janes, appears courtesy of Rowman and Littlefield. Documents are milestones and markers of human activity, part of who and what we are. Our story can be told through the objects, profound and trivial, famous and forgotten, by which we remember and are remembered. Jane's new book, Documents That Change the Way We Live, examines dozens of compelling stories that describe these documents, focusing on their creation, motivation, influence, context, and their connections to contemporary life. Documents That Change the Way We Live and even more books about books are available from Rowman and Littlefield. If you're purchasing the book from Rowman.com, that's ROWMAN.com, use the promo code Joe Janes, all one word, that's JOEJANES, to save 30% off the cover price. Tell us a little bit about sort of the direction that the dictionary went in. It became Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Webster himself was, I guess, an ardent supporter of copyright, but that didn't turn out so well for him.
Well, because now Webster's dictionary is not trademarked.
Yeah.
There's the bitter joke in all of this is that you and I can put together a Webster's dictionary, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Merriam-Webster is trademarked, and they have certainly the copyright on Merriam-Webster dictionaries. They're the legal inheritors to the Webster's original 1828. But But yeah, for somebody who fought for very early American copyright law and really believed it, among other things, and spent many, many years on that, the fact that his name has entered the public domain he'd be furious about it. He probably have mixed opinions about the Twitter feed,
right?
Which I delight in.
Yes,
not only the word of the day stuff, which is fine, but this word is trending because so and so said such and such on Instagram. And,
I wanted to ask you about that. It's social media now. Obviously, brands use it, to interact with their audiences, and Merriam-Webster's is certainly doing that in a really fun way. Which kind of almost gives life to a document, I guess, if you want.
Well, who would have guessed that Merriam-Webster, it's just so funny, is a kind of, internet darling. Exactly. It's just, but it also, people are kind of fascinated by words, and you get these news articles about such and such a word goes in the dictionary, and all hell's breaking loose, and oh my God, it's the end of civilization as we know it, because OED added bro hug last year, and that was, and when the Webster's third dictionary came out in 1961, they added ain't as a word, and oh my God, there was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal about ain't in the Webster's dictionary is the fall of Western civilization as we knew it. So people take their words seriously. The French take it more seriously. I wouldn't want to have to be in the meetings of the Académie Française if I could help it. Right. But this notion of if it's in the dictionary, somehow that legitimizes or ratifies a word. That means it's a real word as opposed to just something people say. Yeah. I think Webster was on to the idea that words are the building block of a culture. And because that's how we communicate. Yes, images and music and such, but that's how we communicate. And so if the words articulate the culture, and therefore the words matter, and therefore how we define the words, how we decide what's a word and what isn't, how we represent that kind of is one of those keystones of a culture.
Yeah, but I feel like it's kind of feast or famine. You mentioned when dictionaries add new words, there's celebration or controversy, and it's sort of this we don't care until we do kind of thing about dictionaries. We have Microsoft's dictionary, or we have spell check, and we just kind of float along.
A little red underline thing. Yeah,
exactly, and then
But there's also, this occurred to me this morning because I was talking to a colleague about this, friend as a verb.
Right.
Friend was always a noun and occasionally an adjective, but now friend is a verb. Yeah. And okay, so that's kind of weird, but that bespeaks a different kind of social relationship.
Yeah.
Because you can ask somebody, are you really friends or are you Facebook friends? And that's different. And there are people who I wouldn't recognize them on the street, but we're Facebook friends because we went to high school together or something, or they randomly found me on Facebook and friended me. And so it's not only a different usage of the word, but that reflects a different kind of social relationship, that reflects a different kind of structure in the society. And we all have Facebook friends, and everybody knows what that is. But friend as a verb kind of encapsulates that. And that, I think, again, Webster would be all over that's part of who we are. And so therefore it should be represented.
You just heard from Joe Janes, Associate Professor at the University of Washington Information School and author of Documents That Changed the Way We Live. Joe is a frequent speaker, and he has authored several books on librarianship and technology, and he is the creator and host of Documents That Changed the World, a popular podcast series that he based his latest book on. This concludes episode 2 of our 4-part series with Joe, where we discuss some of the documents he profiles in his book. This episode was brought to you by Rowman and Littlefield and Choice. Be sure to join us for episode 3 when we talk about the famous We Can Do It poster. It's the one with Rosie the Riveter on it, but Rosie definitely isn't who you think she is.
The common belief is that the We Can Do It poster is recruiting women to go work in the factories during World War II because all the men were off fighting, and so they needed somebody to, build airplanes or ships or whatever, and she was, telling women to join the workforce. Every aspect of that is absolutely wrong.
You can search for and listen to all of the episodes of the Authority File podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, or you can find us on the Choice website at choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship drop-down. If you do listen to us on iTunes or Stitcher, be sure to give us a review. In the meantime, you can find out more about Choice Reviews and get updates on the latest podcast episodes on the Choice Reviews Facebook page or on Twitter at Choice_Reviews. Search for or comment on the podcast using hashtag #TheAuthorityFile. Thank you for joining us.